Hello, today we're going to go through measures and calculated columns in Power BI Desktop. Measures are dynamic values that change based on what you are looking at in a report. They are calculated dynamically within the filter context of a visual. Measures will only be calculated where they are used in the report and respond to filters and slices. So we also have automatic measures. When you have loaded a fact table into a report, there are usually fields that are automatically detected as numeric. In the data pane, so here, any field with a sigma value, such as this one here, contact duration, indicates the value can be aggregated. Sum is the default aggregation for a numeric data type. You can change the aggregation easily to others, such as account or average. However, please be mindful that not all aggregation types will apply to every numeric type. For example, account would not be relevant for count duration, as it would only count the rows for each duration of a contact. For this example, I will get a stack column chart and add contact duration to the chart. As you can see here, this is just a sum of the contact duration. You can change it just by right-clicking on here, and you can see the options that you have available. So we can just change it from a sum to an average. So now we have our average as 48.45 for a contact. So in Power BI, you can create your own measures using DAX, which is Data Analysis Expressions, which is a formula language. DAX formulas use many of the same functions, syntax and operations as Excel formulas. However, DAX is designed to work with relational data and perform calculations that are more dynamic. There are a lot of DAX functions available. If you go to Microsoft Learn, you will find many that you can use. When a measure is created, it is called a model measure and is added to the data table where you can make your measure. You can also view all measures in the model view. So here in the model view, if you click, you will see on the side here, you've got model and tables. And if you expand measures here, you will see all the measures we've already got. There are also quick measures available. So if we click this here, you can select a calculation. So there are many options that can help get you started. This next example, we're going to create our own measure. So if we hover over our table here, we select the three dots, more options, and then new measure. So for this one, you have the name of the measure in front, and then you always need the equal sign after. So we're just going to call this one duration. And then this will just be a sum. So if you start typing, it will give you the option there. And then we want it to be from our warehouse dimension contact table, and this will be contact duration, and then we close the bracket, and then we select the tick if we want to commit, or we can cross it out if we want to cancel it. So now we have got our duration measure. You can also use your measure in another measure. So if you want to find the average contact duration for each patient, I've already got a measure of a distinct count of our NHS number. So we can now do another measure. So if we select more options again, a new measure, and then this will be our average. So we've got average duration, and then we want to divide. Then we want a square bracket. As you can see, it gives you help at the top here. And we want it to be duration, and then a comma, and then another open square bracket, and we want that to be patient. So if you start typing, it will come up with the list, and then a comma, and then our alternate result would be a 0, and then we close the bracket. Then we commit. Now we're going to use our measure in the report. So as we've made some measures, we can have a line and clustered column chart, add it to the canvas, make it bigger, and then on our x-axis we can have contact date, and then we can click out some of the things we don't want to show it by. So we can have it by year and month, and I want to add the patients as the column, and I'm going to expand the hierarchy down so we can see it all, and then I'm going to add the duration in the line, the average duration in the line axis, and then that gives our average duration per patient. So you can add more detail to your measures. You can add more filter context. For example, here I've got contact outcome selected as attended for this service, but you can add attended and filter it in the measure itself, but by doing this you do restrict what you can see. So by having it more flexible, it allows you to change it, and then you can say you want to show it for cancelled or complete, for example. You can further filter the measures by other fields. For example, I want to filter the measures by contact year. So to do that, we can add a slicer to our page. So I'm going to add a list slicer, drag over the contact date, and then we can select the year from our value here. So we just cross out the other ones, and then we do have our year slicer here. So here I'm just going to select 2023, and as you can see, it's filtered it. So we're now going to go over calculated columns. So a calculated column is a static value added to a table. It's calculated row by row when you load the data, and they're not dependent on using filters in a report. Calculated columns are useful if you wish to put calculated values in a slicer, or when the results need to be displayed in the rows or columns of a visual. They are also useful when needing to create categories of a value. For example, if you need to create a waiting times category based on the number of days a patient has been waiting for a contact. To create a new column, you can use it in the report view, or you can go to your data pane and then go to edit query and do it in your Power Query tool. We've already covered conditional columns and other ways of doing that in one of our other previous videos. So for this one, I'm just going to show you how to do it here. So we press the three dots and we select new column. And as the same as before, you can name it to something that you want to name it. So I'm just going to name it total patients. And then after that, we would just say, I'm going to count ID patient. So count, and then we go down to our warehouse table, and then here we just select ID patient, and then close the bracket, and then I'm going to add a table to the pane here, and then add total patients, and then just select contact date. And as you can see, there is no filter context transition, so this is not the actual total amounts of patients. So for this one, you would need to wrap this in using a calculate function. So then this will change the column to show the values by row. So to do this, we'd select on our measure again, and then before count, we would write calculate. Select that, and then we can commit this one. And as you can see, now that we've wrapped it in a calculate function, it understands more what we're trying to get out of the column. For best practice, when using aggregations of values, it is better to use measures and not calculated columns. However, there are times when calculated columns are needed. So if you want your new data to do any of the following, such as appear on rows, columns, or be used in visualization, axis and legend, then you can use a calculated column. Just like regular columns of data, calculated columns can be used as a field in any area. So for this example, we will use a calculated column to give us a month number of the contact date. So we'll start with contact month number, and then equals, and then we will type in a month. And then we want this to come from our warehouse table, and this would be from our contact date, and then we would select date, and as you can see at the top it says returns a number from 1 to 12 representing the month, and then we'll close the bracket and then press enter. So we can also do the same thing to give us the contact month name. So to do this, we would do the same thing as before, select a new column, be contact month name, and then for this one we would select format, and then we would select our table again, and then select contact date, and then date, and then we want to do a comma, then we want to use a back quote, and then we will type in MMMM and then close. and then we will close the bracket and then select the commit. So now that we have done this, we can add our new columns in a visual slicer. So I'm just going to select a list slicer here and then add the contact month name. But as you can see here, they for some reason they sort it by alphabetical order rather than the actual order of the name. So as we have already made this, we can then sort our contact month name by our contact month number. So to do that, we would select on it so it grays out, and then at the top here we would do sort by column, and then we would sort this by the contact month number. And as you can see now, it starts from January and ends in December.